Hello, if you want to know how to do these sort of painting effects, all grimy and futuristic, well this is the tutorial for you. I'm actually going to cover a few different paint effects in this tutorial, a brick, a metallic and then a sort of painted metal, a couple of effects for that. This tutorial is really aimed at the Click-Lock City system, which was a Kickstarter we have either done or are doing, depending on when you watch this, which print flat like this. And the first thing you'll need is a jolly good priming, just to get that paint nicely stuck on there. Here we go. I'm going to use a lot of spray paint in this tutorial. And then after that, I'm going to spray half of the tiles black, sort of in a line like this, to do a little bit of shading, you know, depth of colour. Followed by a light angled dusting of white to try and highlight it. Whether this works and whether it shows through the other layers of paint is debatable, but I'm going to hope it shows through. This is what it looks like. There you go, sort of. You can see there's some basis of shading, which is a good start. And it was quick. And then to add to the sort of grimy, rusty feel, a few little dots of brown in random places. Well, not random, equally dispersed, I would say, actually. Then for some of the tiles, because I want to make some metallic looking, I'm going to give them a little coat of a darker gunmetal spray. From one side, that's going to hopefully go into all the crevasses. And then from an angle on the other side, a lighter silver spray paint. Check me out with two colours of silver. What a wizard I am. Then back inside in the warm, this slightly wobbly camera, I'm going to use some black airbrush paint just to do a little bit more shading around the edge. I think my main aim with this, because there was a load of it, is I just wanted to try and get stuff done as quickly as possible, because I do have an awful lot of terrain to paint, because there's so much in the project, you know. So airbrush away like this. And if you want to get a nice highlighted edge, you can then take a sponge and just sort of clean off the upper edges. Or even use the sponge to dry brush a lighter silver paint on the top. This is quite a good technique if you don't have an airbrush, which I realise not everybody does. You can use the sponge with some lighter and darker shades just to get that nice fading that you get with an airbrush, which is really good for big flat panels like we've got here. And when I'm doing a big project like terrain, I tend to not use my expensive like Citadel paints or anything like that. I'm going to use just some, you know, art shop cheapo acrylics, so I'm just going to mix together some browns, oranges, some yellow ochres, really nice. This is for the rust that we're going to do. And then using your very cheapest brush with all the bent nasty bristles on it, just dab, first of all, sort of that general brown into all various corners, like we did with the brown earlier on, just sort of dispersed. You can wipe a little bit off like that. Then, because rust is more than one colour, I'm going to get another clean brush and stipple on some lighter, the more yellow ochres, maybe some reds as well, because there's quite a lot of colour in rust. And finally, some sort of tealy, bluey green, just very sparingly in places to give it like a copper colour to the rust as well. And if you want, and you have the time, one final little airbrush or sponging just of a bit more shading around the edge. And there you go, there's some metal. But let's look at another type of painting. So next it's brick, and bricks are quite an important one really for this project, I always thought, because if you watch films like Blade Runner, there's a lot of brick in the future, so this is how I painted my brick. You can see I've undercoated and done a little bit of spray shading, just like I did with the silver. And using a nice wide brush, you can see here I'm failing to just paint the very tops of the bricks, so there's going to need to be a little bit of cleanup, but that's alright. Because also you can just use sponges, because they, I think, actually worked better with these ones. Especially the nice wide bits of bricks like this. Get some, you know, terracotta colours, mix them up, and just then I find the sponges actually dry brushed better than the brush, especially on the brick. Look at that, lovely and neat. Bit dodgy around the edge, but we'll paint over that, it's fine. Especially because to add another little bit of life to your bricks, get some lighter colours, yellow ochre again here, and then just choosing the odd occasional brick, paint that a slightly different colour, and it just adds a bit of life and variety, because bricks, you know, they're all different. Just like every human being, we're all unique snowflakes. And then it's time to do some shading. I'm going to use some speed paints or contrast paints just to go in. You see I'm just dabbing quite roughly into any, you know, nooks and crannies, crevices like this. And then I'm going to clean it off with a bit of cloth or sponge or your hand or something like this, which not only cleans it but also gives it a nice gentle fade as well, which is another way of doing this, you know, if you don't have an airbrush. And all you've got to do then is a similar thing for the grey bricks at the bottom, a similar technique, and then go and paint any pipes or panels and stuff like that. You're just going to have to do that in a normal way with a brush, bit of highlighting, you know, you've done that before, you know what to do. And that's a lovely brick pattern. But hark, what colour is that on top? It must be another kind of painting technique. There's actually two kinds of metal that I've done, this one and another one, which is like flaky. This one's for a more finer finish of panel, still grimy, so I've mixed myself up a lovely sort of off green colour, and I'm just sponging it on, not bothering too much about whether it's going into the cracks, but trying to avoid them as much as I can. Then using a sort of wedge-shaped brush, I think I'm using here, just to cover up all the greeblies and anything that I want to be metal. I'm starting off with a black, I think it's black, yeah, black or very dark, very, very dark silver in all the crannies, and then I'll go over the top with a lighter silver. And finally, airbrush on some grey into the corners. You could use a sponge here, but the airbrush is so much quicker. And that's all it was, just sponges and airbrushes and paints for the silver bits. Let's keep it simple, you know. But of course there's more than one way to paint metal, and this technique I'm quite pleased with really, because it's really good for the interiors of the buildings to add a little bit of detail to the flat panels that you have there. So what you're going to need to do is get some old plastic, like an old plastic bag or a bin bag, scrunched up old plastic, quite thin plastic worked well, and spray paint onto the plastic. I'm starting off with some darker shades, because the things you put on first are going to be on top, that'll make sense later, and then putting a cream colour, like a lovely magnolia, like the people that lived in these houses would have had, and build up like that. And once you've left that to fully dry, you need to just start scrunching it up. Now, I think maybe this paint was a little bit too thick, and you're going to have to experiment with different paints and different bags to see what works with you. But scrunch it up, and that's going to create the flaky effect that we're looking for in the paint, like old peeled paint that you would get in a forgotten building. That's what we're going for here, yeah? Then this is where the magic happens. Get some spray mount, some spray glue sort of stuff, and spray it liberally on the back. Then do wait till it goes just tacky. Then, having cut your plastic into convenient little rectangles like this, put them on. Push it all on to the back of the tiles. You can just do this on the front of the tiles as well. I tried that out. And peel it off, and you get something that looks a bit like this. You'll want to clean off any scrapes, and it gets quite flaky, I will warn you. You're going to get flakes of paint everywhere, but give it a good brush with a big thick like wool brush, and that will get the worst of it off and create some more cracks as well, which is nice. And the final stage is to get some washes, just to add a little bit more grime. I'm using some Agrax Earthshade here, but I also found that the speed paint, they've got a leather colour, works really well. A few different colours of wash always adds to just the depth of colour and the realism, because, you know, dirt will be more than one colour, I would say. And use a really shitty brush for this as well. That's my advice. And there you have it, a lovely big pile of grimy, rusty, metally terrain. Perfect for, you know, Underhive or whatever it is you're doing. If you've come from the Kickstarter, then there will be loads more stuff like this on the channel. So don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell and all that stuff to be reminded of what's going on. And if you just come for the video, then head over to the Kickstarter page where it's still going on, if you're watching this in sort of November or December 2022. Anyway, thanks for watching, bye! Like the video, follow me around, press the bell, it makes no sound. Like the video, press subscribe, I don't know why I am alive!